What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking transfer tips ahead of Game Week 30, talking about some popular players that are transferred in and out by FPL managers and giving you my opinion on whether I think it's a good move and just some general things to think about as well. So if you have been enjoying this series this season, give it a like, keep hitting subscribe. It does support the channel as well. All right, Ivan Toney up first. 114,000 transfers in already. Very popular, maybe for good reason. He's very cheap, 6.6 million. As we've discussed a lot of times over the last few weeks, there's not a huge amount of forwards that are just standing out as really great options. And he does have a fixture this week, Leicester away, which, to be fair, is pretty good. The only thing I would say is I feel like I'm getting slight Coutinho vibes, but I feel like this one might be even worse in that Coutinho's a good option, right? Tony's not a bad option either in general. Leicester away, Watford away are good, but the rest of the fixtures are pretty poor. And Coutinho came out of a super good Game Week 28. Anyone that had him, fair play. Anyone that captained him, fair play. But the fixture run did then get a lot tougher, and it looked a lot tougher for him to keep up these points. And I feel like that's the same with Toney. He scored 5 goals in the last 2 game weeks, right? If we just bring it up quickly. But obviously, 3 of the goals were penalties. So he had a hat-trick against Norwich. Again, happy days if you owned him. 2 of the goals are penalties. And then he scores 1 goal against Burnley, and then the other one is a penalty. Now, obviously, he's got a couple of goals in those games that weren't penalties, which is great. But he's playing against Norwich and Burnley. We go back to what the fixture run looks like now. It's got Chelsea, West Ham, Spurs, Man United. These are all teams that I think they could struggle against. I don't see them scoring a huge amount of goals. And when you look at Toney's expected goals for the season, like 0.23 non-penalty is really poor for a forward. And I know what people are saying, that earlier on in the season, they were playing with 2 up front, so he was kind of like holding the ball up, maybe trying to play Mbomo in, and now he's more of a focal point. They've got Eriksen in now that's more of that playmaker figure, and obviously in a different way to how Toney was playing, but he's there now. But then I looked at the numbers for the 2 games against Burnley and Norwich, and again, non-penalty against Norwich, 0.2, non-penalty against Burnley, 0.3. These are fairly low numbers, and it's been low for pretty much the whole season as well. So I think we're in a situation where people have obviously not got 11 players a lot of the time, so they want another player. And obviously a lot of us still have pretty good squads, so we haven't got kind of, 4.5 million forwards that we're just benching every week. So you could bench Toney outside of like the fixture against Leicester, but overall I'm just not sure it's worth using a transfer on. I just think you get him for Leicester. Okay, if he goes nuts and gets like a double-digit haul, fair play. Even if you have to transfer him straight out, you're maybe slightly up on points. But if you're using a transfer straight away to bring him in, then straight back out, I'd almost look at that as 8 points and think, is he going to beat that against Leicester? I don't think he does. And I also think, just as a general point, I don't think people should not make transfers this week. Everyone's team's going to be different. I've got 10 players, 11 if Luca Dean's fine. Obviously, it makes sense for me to not make any this week, most likely. But I just think Game Week 30 to 31 is a break for the internationals. And we could get a lot of information after Game Week 30 in terms of, double Game Week rearrangements and stuff like that, where fixtures might swap around. And I just think having that extra transfer could be really valuable. So again, it's all going to depend on who you're getting rid of. If you're downgrading a striker to get Toney to fund another move, and you also get a fixture from Toney this week, perfectly fine. I think Leicester away is a good fixture. Anyone that's thinking about him on a free hit, it looks good. But I would question whether this is a good long-term punt, or not even punt, but a long-term transfer where the penalties are not necessarily going to keep coming, and his underlying numbers just don't look that great for a forward. They might improve. I'm not saying they won't, but I'm not sure that's going to happen against the likes of Chelsea or West Ham. So overall, I don't particularly like this transfer in this week. I don't think it's bad, but I don't really like it. Okay, so I mentioned Coutinho just a second ago. Let's talk about him now. 7.5 million, decent price. 48,000 managers already transferred him in. And again, like Toney, he has a fixture this week, right? So that's already a big plus. Any player that's got a fixture this week is great. But obviously you want to be able to keep them long term. And I'm not sure Coutinho is a great option right now for the next 4 fixtures. Now, his underlying numbers, which I talk about a lot, they're looking really healthy. 0.43 expected goals per 90, 0.31 expected assists. If he kept that up for the season, he'd be must own pretty much, right? They are really good numbers. And I don't want to contradict myself too much, because a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about how we shouldn't take too much into account because it's a small sample size, and that he could get somewhere near those numbers. His numbers for the last few seasons have been good, etc., etc. But there is maybe a little bit of a pattern emerging showing that fixtures are pretty important. So this is on FB Ref. This is for Coutinho. This is his non-penalty expected goals and expected assists. So this column here. So the 0.8 was against Man United, decent. Then it was 0.2, 0.1, 0.8 expected assists against Leeds, good. And then the numbers were pretty poor for the next 3 games. And then all of a sudden he plays Southampton, who just seem to have gone to pot right now. And then he plays Leeds and the numbers are good. And then the next game, they're back to just being 0.3. So they're okay, 0.3 expected goals, but it's nothing fantastic. And if we look at his return so far, they're very clustered in certain games, okay? So that he comes off the bench, gets a goal against Man United, fair enough. Blanks against Everton, 3 returns against Leeds, another return against Leeds in the fixture just gone, 2 returns against Southampton, who again, I thought they were playing pretty well. They're playing pretty poorly recently, but then blanks again against Newcastle, Watford, Brighton, and again against West Ham. Now you might turn around and say, well, West Ham's a fairly tough fixture. Yes, I'd 100% agree with you, and that is why I don't think he's a great option, because Arsenal, Wolves away, Spurs at home, Liverpool at home, they're just not that great. Now, playing at home, better than playing away. So he's not playing away against Arsenal, Spurs and Liverpool. But they're all going to be fairly difficult games, and I'm just not sure there's going to be a huge amount of points in it for him. He might tick over, but I think these double-digit hauls that he's been getting recently, like against the likes of Southampton, and obviously, in the double game week, obviously he got a huge double-digit haul, but I just don't see that happen. I think the Arsenal game could be fairly close, and I'd put Arsenal as probably favourites, although Villa are at home, of course, and same with Spurs and same with Liverpool. I mean, the Wolves game might be okay in game week 31, but when they want to, they can defend, and again, they're not really a team I would see conceding a huge amount of goals, and that's not always necessarily important, right? If Villa score 1 goal and Coutinho's got the goal or the assist, happy days, but he's not going to be involved with every single goal that they do or get. So I just don't see him as a great option. I guess if you ask me the question, who would I bring in instead, that gets pretty tricky because I don't see a huge amount of players this week that are just great options. But I would still have the likes of Saka and maybe even Kulusevski slightly above because they also play this week. They don't necessarily have much better fixtures, but a fixture run after game week 30 is pretty decent. And both Arsenal and Spurs might get a double game week in game week 33. Now, that is not 100% certain, but it's a possibility. Whereas in game week 33, Coutinho's got Liverpool at home. Maybe the Burnley fixture gets put in somewhere and that makes him a little bit of a better option. But I just think there's maybe better ways to spend your transfers right now. I think he's done really well in game week 28. Owners probably don't want to sell. That's fair enough. But in terms of bringing him in, I'm just not sure about it right now. I probably wouldn't do it myself. Joao Cancelo, 51,000 transfers out already. A 9-pointer last night. Could have been more. Even if you say, well, the shot was off target that hit the post, so he didn't deserve the goal. Laporte probably should have scored the follow-up, right? And that would have been another 3 points. We're talking double digits then. Happy days. Now, he has dropped to 6.9 million. He had another price drop last night. I think I talked about him a couple of weeks ago. And since then, he's dropped 0.2. I'd love it to be a little bit more. Maybe it will be because of the blank this week. But I don't think he's going to go much lower. And the fixtures are pretty good for the rest of the season. Now, I've talked about Cancelo a lot over the last few weeks. I sold him in game week 26. I probably would have sold him on a game week 28 wildcard as well. The thing is, those moves were done for a reason. They were done for a period of time. Game week 26 to 30, Man City had no double game weeks. A lot of us free hit him in game week 27 anyway. I feel like the longer and longer you leave it to do a move like that, the less kind of viable it is. And if I had Cancelo now, I would not be looking to sell him, even with a blank this week. There's very few defenders who I think could be better options over this time frame, even with the blank. So possibly like an Arsenal defender, because they got the game this week. They might have a double in game week 33. Possibly the same for Spurs defenders as well. The only thing I would say with Spurs defenders is if you want one that's absolutely nailed, you're going to go for Dyer, Romero or Davies, right? They look the most nailed in that team. And they're just nowhere near as exciting as Cancelo. And even with a double in a game this week, I'm not sure they outscore him. And if you look at the likes of Reguilon or Doherty, I've got Doherty. I like him as an option. But compared to Cancelo, I don't think there is a very good comparison. Even as a Doherty owner, I've still got slight worries about his minutes in the back of my mind. Whereas you just don't have that with Cancelo. And the thing I would say about kind of Man City and Liverpool right now, the title race is still very much on, right? That game in game week 32 is now huge where they play each other. There's not many points points in it. And the longer that goes on for us, the better that is for the Premier League. Because when the Premier League gets won a long time in advance, like Man City have done before, they start rotating, they concentrate on Champions League, etc. They can't necessarily do that right now. So a nailed on Cancelo looks pretty damn good. And for me as a non-owner, the only question is how and when do I get him back? And I think I can see why maybe people are doing it, because you've got a blank this week and you've got a game against Liverpool in 32, and you probably think, well, there's no way he gets a clean sheet against Liverpool. And to be fair, that's probably a good assumption, right? Liverpool are pretty damn good in attack. But I just wonder if this game might be a little bit less open than the reverse fixture, which was obviously pretty open. Salah got that amazing goal when he kind of did Laporte. But for this one, like I know this is going to sound so cliche and so obvious. Neither team want to lose this game, and that could make the game play out in a different way. Obviously, they don't want to lose any games. I get that, right? I get it's a stupid cliche and a stupid thing to say. But a game week 32, with only a few games to go, it would feel pretty big if you lost this game, and they might set up a little bit more cautiously, and that might warrant keeping Cancelo. If you had him, you'd play him anyway. But I just think the fixtures outside of that, Burnley, Watford, Leeds, and basically for the rest of the season, are just so good, right? Watford, Leeds, Newcastle. After that, it's West Ham, Villa, Brighton at home to rearrange as well. If they go, again, another step further in the FA Cup, that'll be another game. Double game weeks to come as well. I just think he's a really good option. If we get word after game week 30, there's suddenly a bunch of double game weeks and we don't have transfers to bring him in, there might be a scenario where I don't go with him until game week 34 onwards, just for my own team. But if I had him now, I don't think I would be selling him for most players. Maybe for a Spurs defender, maybe for an Arsenal one. But if they both concede in game week 30, you'll be very glad that you kept Cancelo, I think. So I want to talk about Mo Salah, because I know the Arsenal game is still to come and we don't know 100% whether he's going to play or not, and it would be easier to wait for that before we make any decisions. But I want to take it as though he's going to be fit for Watford, and whether you could still possibly sell him and what the scenario is where that could happen, because 54,000 managers have already done it. Now, it is worth saying, I've recorded this section already and I'm coming back to record it again, because Jurgen Klopp has said Mo Salah should be fit for the Arsenal game. He's ready to train. Now, just because he hasn't trained doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to miss out, because it was a short turnaround between games anyway, and players don't necessarily train all the way through between matches. They often get a bit of a rest as well. So it's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily mean that he's definitely going to start, but it doesn't mean that he's definitely going to be on the bench anyway, either. And I do think either way, he's going to be fine for Watford at home, unless he gets another injury, of course, right? So we're going to take it from that viewpoint, that he's fine for Watford at home. And could you still sell him? Now, one of the reasons to maybe look at it is fixtures, okay? And I would say realistically, only Son or Kane is a reason I would sell Salah this week. Potentially. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just talking about a reason why. I know people hate talking about stuff like this, that you can't have a conversation around it. I'm not saying I will do it, and I definitely won't do it, but you could think about it. So they've got a game in game week 30 against West Ham. Salah obviously blanks. In game week 31, Salah's got Watford at home. Spurs have Newcastle at home. Now, granted, if you had to pick between the two, you'd definitely go Salah captain. You would really be hoping that Son or Kane can kind of keep up with Salah this week, right? That is the tricky week. Game week 32, they got Villa away. It's not necessarily an easy fixture, but I'd say it's easier than Man City away. And again, people will point to the reverse fixture with Salah doing really well against Man City, but I do think it could be a bit more cautious. And then in game week 33, you've got Brighton at home. Spurs might get a double game week. Now, the problem is you are kind of doing the transfer now and betting ahead that the double game week happens. Because if it doesn't, it makes the Salah to Son or Kane switch a lot worse. But potentially, if it did happen, and there's going to be other double game weeks in game week 33 anyway, Salah's probably not going to be the standout captain. So arguably, in the next 4 game weeks, the only week where you really, really want to captain him is game week 31, because I think a lot of us will go away from him against Man City away. It doesn't mean you have to, of course, but there's a conversation around being able to do that. And so you could look to sell him, but I think you really need that double game week for Spurs in game week 33 to make it worthwhile. The issue is, the really good game for Salah comes very quickly in game week 31 against Watford, where he would be the standout captain. Now, some people have kind of speculated that he might miss that. There's an international break, and because of fixtures that are coming up, because he's going to play the World Cup qualifiers, isn't he, right? He's going to want Egypt to the World Cup. He's going to want to be there. Now, I don't want to keep going back and forth between screens, but the fixture for Liverpool is 2nd of April now, is the first game at 12:30. So that's not an ideal situation. And if we look at Egypt's fixtures, they play on the 29th. So you've got 30th, 31st of March, 1st of April, and then bam, straight into the 2nd of April. So only 4 days, less than 4 days really, because they play at 6 o'clock. That game's not going to finish until 8 onwards. Then they've got to travel back. Now, the counterpoint really would be, well, they can play Diaz, they can play Mane, they can play Jota, etc. And I do think Jota will play that game because of Portugal's fixtures. I just don't think he's going to be as tired. There's not going to be as much travel. So Jota probably will play. But obviously, Egypt are playing Senegal. So straight away, that means Mane is going to be playing the same amount of time, unless he gets brought off early or whatever. But I doubt it for a World Cup qualifier. And so they're both probably going to travel back at the same time. So you might say, well, Diaz could play and Mane could play. But if you look at Colombia's fixtures, they play the next day. They don't play till half midnight on the 30th of March. So he's got even less travel time to come back. So because of all that, I do think there's a chance that Salah could miss out because of the World Cup qualifiers. But I think when Diaz and Mane are also going to be travelling, in Diaz's case, he's going to be away for a little bit longer. If you assume that as soon as the World Cup qualifiers are done, they fly straight back. I mean, yes, there'll be major celebrations for whoever wins, but it's not like actually winning a trophy. So you'd imagine they'd be straight back. Salah then becomes the best captain for Watford at home. So you don't want to be put off because of what's happened before. The only way I can see Salah to Son or Kane being massively punished is if in Game Week 31 you get a bit of a situation like Salah and Havertz back in Game Week 9 where Salah just smashes. Like Salah gets a hat-trick against Watford, Kane and Son blank against Newcastle. Suddenly you're massively regretting doing the transfer. And like I said, I'm not going to do it mostly because I've got my 3 Spurs players, and so to get Kane, it's 2 transfers to switch the Salah money, and it's also another transfer to get rid of one of my Spurs players. And if he's going to be almost fit for Arsenal and potentially even start, then chances are he'll be fine for Watford at home as well, and he will be my captain that week. So it's one of those for brave FPL managers. You get the extra fixture in 30, a better fixture in 32, potentially an extra fixture in 33. I can see why people are doing it, but it's 60% ownership, right? You have to be a brave FPL manager to do it. And I think in Game Week 31, there's no conversation. I think Salah is the best captain. There we go. I'm going to leave that one there. I was going to talk about some Leicester players, but I think I want to try and wait and see what happens in the European games and stuff like that, because players like Maddison, for example, just haven't had regular minutes recently. And I think Barnes might be a slightly better option, but I kind of want to see what happens in the next game. Generally, I quite like Leicester players in this week, but ultimately, I just don't think there's a huge amount of options, which is a big problem, unless you're on free hit, of course. So if you have enjoyed that video, give it a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here, and I will catch you again tomorrow.